play. I'll post it in the chat over here on the side. It was pretty interesting anyways.
Oh, nice. Class 3. All right, I'll check it out later. Thank you.
Yeah, pretty cool stuff. Maybe next time I'll take part. I like a good Kubernetes challenge.
Yeah, that sounds fun. Yeah. Let me just share this thing here. We're testing a new thing, which is the YouTube stream that I just launched. What was that sound? Did you hear it as well? No, so it was just me. Oh, I guess it's, no, I don't know. All right, well, let's wait a couple more minutes for Jessica and Skylar. Maybe let me pop that in. Where is? No, I don't see anyone. Well, I guess otherwise it's going to be you and me going live. Let's give it one more minute. I'm sending them an email. Well, I guess we'll go live and then hopefully they join. All right, recording on. Let's go. Let's start the webinar. And we are live. Welcome everybody. Super excited. Welcome, Stefan. Thank you for doing this, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
and
good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. It's been a while. I apologize in advance if I'm speaking a little bit weird, but half of my mouth is still asleep from the dentist appointment that I had. So, but I think it's getting better. So hopefully you guys can understand me loud and clear. All right. So today's session is a warm up to PlatformCon. The background, the T-shirt, we have it all. I love it. As you saw on the events, and by the way, feel free to drop in the chat where you guys are joining from, so that we get a sense for the audience. So as you can see on the event, we're supposed to be 4 of us up here today, but we're still waiting for Skylar and Jessica, who just told me they're on the wrong meeting. Oh, hey, Keith. I remember you from yesterday. How you doing, man? Let me just share the link with them so that they come to the right place. All right.
Any Canadians in here? Fellow Canadians?
Oh, Munich, Atlanta. All right. Some North American. No Canada though. Where are you based out of, actually, Stefan?
I'm out of Toronto. I can see the CN
Toronto.
Tower straight out my window right here.
Oh, it's cool in Canada for Xavier. Nice. Oh, Ilya, I'm in Berlin too. Nice. All right. I think we might get our other two speakers over here now that I sent it over to them. Um, I'm imagining that everybody in the audience today is going to attend PlatformCon next week. But if you're not, or you haven't registered yet, please go do so. Just dropping the link in here. Oh, hey, Bruno. I love Sao Paulo. So let's just wait a couple more seconds. Hopefully we get Skylar and Jessica on. But yeah, just to give everyone some context, today's everybody, we have three different platform experts that all have built platforms at their current companies. And so the idea of today is really to go over kind of what we all think about platform engineering, right? Where we see it coming from, where we see it going, where we see the hottest trends in the community. We'll talk about kind of everything that pops up. And so if any of you want to cover something specific, any specific topic, just drop them in the Q&A or drop them in the chat, and we'll talk about them. So it's really pretty open conversation. And then we also want to talk about the community, PlatformCon, what can we do better? What can we do? And also what are the highlights? So what are we sort of, waiting for? And then what can we do better as a platform engineering community? What comes after PlatformCon, right? And we're still having some issues here, but I think Jessica and Skylar, if you are among the attendees, which you said you are, then I think I can promote you to speakers. Let me see. Nope, I don't see them. Sorry, apologies, guys. Otherwise, if anyone wants to step up as a speaker, feel free. We'll add you. Q&A. Oh, you already replied that, Stefan. Nice.
Fast.
Yeah, fast. Too fast for me.
Well, if you want, in the meantime, I could talk a little bit about Achievers.
Let's kick it off. Give an intro about yourself, what you're doing. Stefan, everyone has been a super active member of the community. We already did a webinar, I think about a year ago. And so really appreciate your contribution, man. Yeah, go ahead. I'll try to sort out the technical stuff, and you take over the show for a second.
Sounds good. So hi, everyone. I'm Stefan Klesnikovic. I am a principal site reliability engineer at Achievers. If you're not familiar with Achievers, we're in the business of employee success. So we want the best for our clients' employees, but we also want the best for our employees. And this mindset really helped us when we were developing our IDP. We have a tool called Abattoir. That was originally what my talk was about last year. And we've constantly been growing on this IDP. It's all based on open source technology. So we're not using anything that we pay for necessarily. A lot of it's Terraform and automation, but we've learned a lot of cool things along the way, some good pointers, like using a common syntax for all engineers so they're able to quickly move forward. And if they switch teams, they know that syntax. Also, as part of my PlatformCon talk, I'm going to be kind of switching things up a little bit and talking more more about the culture side of things. So, as I said, Achievers is very invested in our employees. We want all of our developers to have a great developer experience on a regular basis. So we've tried to incorporate that into all of our tooling. So as part of my platform talk, we're going to be talking about, documentation and I know me personally, I hate writing documentation as an engineer, and we wanted to make that process a lot better for our engineers and to write some automation around it. Also, an important thing is to constantly have feedback from whatever IDP tool that you're using. You want to get your feedback from your engineers and be able to apply that to making improvements to your tool. We constantly have a reoccurring survey that we do with our engineers, and we gain feedback to see where we can improve upon the developer experience. I can share a link too in the slides to our link about Abattoir. As I mentioned, this is our IDP. It's mostly written with open source tooling. All of our engineers across the whole business use this framework to set up their microservice. And we're also in the mindset of sensible defaults. We want our engineers to move really quickly. And, if they're moving into production, we want them to have a default set of alerts, for example, or a default set of monitoring. A lot of these kind of concepts play into our tooling, and we try to apply the same sort of method to different things that we do. Sensible defaults is definitely one of them. I recently did another talk. I was in Las Vegas a couple of weeks ago, and I went to see New Relic's Future Stack, and I did a talk there about basically the same thing, like how do you improve the developer experience for engineers for monitoring. At Achievers, we use Kubernetes clusters around the world in a global service mesh. We need to find ways to monitor that and solve observability problems for our engineers. So a lot of that was involved in this tool. We wanted to create default dashboards so engineers don't have to be poking around trying to figure things out in the middle of the night. Yay, Jessica. Hey. Hello.
Hello. We made it. We're almost there. We're 75% of the way.
Great. Yes, Stefan, I'm here to relieve you from your monologue.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be talking to you, Jessica. I've been following the HelloFresh journey online for a couple years now. Especially, I was just telling everybody in this chat here that we're pretty invested in Service Mesh and Istio, and I know you guys have done a lot with Istio internally at HelloFresh. So we're kind of along the same boat as you guys. We love reading about it. So I'm excited to meet you.
Oh, awesome! It's great. Yeah, it's I think it's kind of
and
weird.
We're
I think
complete.
Yeah. I think usually when you publish stuff online, you don't think anyone reads it. So it's always nice to hear that there's someone looking at the things you broadcast.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm in Toronto as well. So I know you guys have a big engineering department here.
Yeah, we do. It's
have some friends and cross over that work over there too. So.
Oh, that's cool. I'm based in Berlin, but it's pretty cool. I kind of like it. When I started at HelloFresh, the thing was that we were based in Berlin. Engineering is in Berlin, and just to see where we are today with the Toronto hub and with New York hub and in Australia as well, it just blows my mind.
Yeah. Skylar, welcome as well. Apologies. I didn't realize that I sent you the YouTube stream link at some point. I think my copy paste didn't work, but hey, now we made it. We're all here. So obviously Stefan already gave a quick intro. Maybe Skylar, you want to go next, and then Jessica, you wrap it up, and then we get going.
Be happy to. Thanks for having me. Sorry about the delay on our entrance here. My name is Skylar Bishop. I'm the Senior Director of Platform Engineering here at Ninja Holdings. I have a deep background in SRE, system administration, network administration, cloud consulting, consulted for some Fortune 50, 100, 150 type companies for a couple of years. And recently I've really focused on platform engineering because I realized that a lot of the problems that we'd been solving for decades we're kind of wrapped up in this idea of what is a developer platform and how does it create developer experience.
Jessica, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Jessica Elliott. I'm Berlin based and I work at HelloFresh as the product lead for the platform tribe. So I think how I ended up in platforms is my background is in engineering, and I kind of stumbled into product management because I got tired of people telling me to build the wrong things. And I guess from there on out, I've worked at a few companies, and like APIs have always been something I found fascinating. And at some point I thought like, oh man, I wish I could just write interfaces for a living, and figured there's no job like that. And then I know developer advocacy is also something that has been growing, and technical writing. And when I found actually this product management job for an internal platform at HelloFresh, I was like, whoa, this is almost like where all of these disciplines combine, like writing and advocacy and product management and developer tooling. And so that's personally why I love this. It's such an interesting space to be in. I feel like there's so much potential here. And yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you all of you to agree to do this and be a part of this and be part of the community. So let's get going, because we burnt 15 minutes. But so I wanted to start first of all with context, because this is something that we got a lot in the community, right? Like, what is platform engineering? Why does it even matter? Right. And so obviously you all have built platforms or building platforms at your current companies, of all different sizes. So, maybe let's start with you again, Jessica, and then we go around the horn. What is, why does this even matter? Like, obviously, this community seems to be hitting a nerve with people. But why do you think is that? And where do you see this journey, coming from in terms of platform engineering as a culture? And where do you think is going?
Yeah, so when I was thinking about this, I can tell you like how I learned about platform engineering is like back when I started like thinking about this is finding the DevOps topologies. I remember that is the first thing that really sparked this thing from like, whoa, like there's a way to think about this in a different way than normal teams in a company. And that was really interesting for me. And I remember at the same time, like reading about in ThoughtWorks that there was I think in around 2017, they had something for platform engineering product teams. And I feel like it was such a niche thing at that point. Like no one was thinking about it, and it just popped up on this radar, and it tickled me a lot. So I feel like that's for me where I felt like a lot of the platform momentum building is the DevOps topologies popping up, ThoughtWorks, and it's kind of silently grown until this whole platform engineering community has started popping up. But I think what matters is, I think that's the general way that tech is going. Like when I think about what platforms are doing for engineering, it's a way of making infrastructure easier and allowing our product teams to focus on innovating faster. And for me, it's kind of similar to like the first time that I started working on a Mac, and there was just nothing to set up. It was just magic. And I felt like that's what platform engineering is doing for engineers. Like we're enabling for them to do magic by just kind of smoothing the bottom layers of development.
I love the Mac analogy. It's pretty spot on. Stefan, what's your view on that?
We got into platform engineering a little bit different than Jessica. Like you guys seem to have a lot more structure around it. We kind of fell into it. Like we didn't know what an IDP was when we first started our microservice journey. Our requirement was to move fast and enable developers to have a good experience with the tooling that we had. And we kind of just fell into building this tool to speed up their process to production. There was so many pieces for microservices to actually work that we needed a kind of a place to bring it all together and make it work for our engineers in a pretty seamless way. So we kind of fell into it. We didn't even know, as I said, what an IDP was at the time. I like that you guys have more structure around it, and you have product owners. Our product owners are still just SRE. Like our team is the product owner, and we have, as I mentioned before you guys actually joined, part of my talk at PlatformCon is about getting feedback from our engineers. most of our employees at Achievers are engineers. So we're in the business of employee success. We want our developers to succeed. So we always put that on our forefront of our minds when we're developing tools, solving problems for them, and constantly getting that feedback loop to make sure we're doing a good job at what we're doing.
Yeah. Scott, go.
I was going to say, I took a similar path. I started out as an individual contributor many years ago. I founded an internet service provider in my parents' garage in '95. And so I really love the tech piece of it. So I got out of like the owning a business type of a thing because I just love the technology and spent several years working just in tech. But I realized that the tech got easy. And as soon as the technology got easy, what I realized was there were problems that I couldn't solve with technology. And actually, most problems I couldn't solve with technology. And right about that time was when the SRE book originally came out. DevOps started to sort of be in this was like early Docker Swarm era. I think it was like 2015 maybe. And so I was getting into these things, and I was embedded into a development team as the operations guy before DevOps really kind of happened. And so we just practiced it because it just made sense. You know, like my code that was all declarative, that was creating virtual machines at the time, was embedded into their repos for their microservices. And it just kind of worked that way. And so we just kind of fell into it because it just made sense. And then later what I realized was, okay, that was great, but it didn't scale. As soon as you get these like kind of bigger problems that you're trying to solve, you need something else. And that was when I really started getting back into consulting, and I actually worked for ThoughtWorks myself in the platform engineering space, and recognized that there was just a lot of great movement that was being done around the concept of developer experience. And to me, as a former sysadmin, former network engineer, you know, SRE, and then finally into the platform engineering and leadership track, that just made sense because we had never focused on that in the old ops world. We'd always just said, no, we're the king of the hill. We have all the power, you know, like everybody else just needs to come to us and deal with it. And of course, that created a terrible experience. And what I realized by being embedded in that dev team is when you enabled them with great tooling, with great outcomes, with great results, they could do their jobs better because they didn't have to worry about all that stupid stuff.
Yeah, I actually like what you said too, because, you know, one of my examples that I use really frequently right now is reliability, right? Reliability used to be always the SRE team. And now we're kind of farming that out. Everybody owns reliability now. You're in charge of your code in production as a developer. You own that service all the way, and you own the reliability of that service. So I like that analogy.
Yeah, and I find that is a super interesting, you know, token point. I was at KubeCon a couple of weeks back, and I had a lot of conversations with people that work on the, you know, DevOps team, the infrastructure team, the SRE team, and you know, I was telling them like, well, you know, based on what you just told me, well, it sounds like what you're really doing is platform engineering, right? And, you know, and a lot of people are like, oh, I never thought about it that way. But I think it's a really interesting conversation around, you know, how do you do that, you know, mindset shift, right? Because obviously, you know, you have to go from this, you know, what you were mentioning, Stefan, the reliability kind of like point of view and maintenance and so on, to, well, actually, now I'm building a product. And, you know, I have internal customers and so on. And that's a completely different approach, right? So how do you think about that, Jessica?
Well, I think it's a lot of ways to go about it, but I think the main thing that's important is having empathy for the people using your things. And I feel that's maybe the easiest way to start with this, is before you try and do the gospel of platform products, just make sure that there's more empathy between the people building these things and the people using it. And it could be as simple as just for them to sit together and see how it gets used. Because I feel like sometimes there's this disconnect because the platform engineers, they build something like, oh, why don't other people use this the same way that I do? Obviously, it's fairly simple. And they forget that the other engineers have different contexts and different working environments. So that would be the thing that you could solve this in a lot of ways, but just kind of connecting these two groups and having empathy for each other, that goes a long way.
Yeah, Absolutely. And actually, we have a question from Luis. I think, Stefan, I see you're already typing. But we can also speak about it. So of course, like Luis, that's super spot on. Like, so SRE versus platform versus DevOps team, right? So what is the scope of each? Skylar, what do you think?
Good question, first of all, Luis. I think yes. The scope of all those is at least a Venn diagram, if not a concentric circle. I think when I think of SRE, it's bigger than platform engineering. When I think of DevOps teams, it's smaller than platform engineering. But I think they're all in the same exact space. I don't think there's a Venn diagram. I think it's just concentric circles. SRE is responsible for reliability. Period. Now, they may, as Stefan said, build the internal developer platform to increase reliability, but at the end of the day, they're doing that as a measurement. They're measuring the outcome of that by looking at how it improves reliability. And so I think there's a terminology thing, though, in the industry. This is the most annoying thing. You've been in it for any amount of time. You know that we overuse things the wrong way and underuse things the right way. So I think SRE has kind of become the new sysadmin in some ways. Like there's this engineering community that's doing great work that that teams are being called SREs, but they're not responsible for reliability. They're just doing the same thing that they were kind of doing before, maybe with new technologies, new processes. But I think when you talk about what an SRE is to me, it's the entire system and how reliable is it to our clients or our customers. Platform engineering is really about how do we create this thing that internal users only, your clients are internal, are reusing to give them these paved roads versus dirt roads that have security built into them and all this automation by default. And then DevOps teams, to me, I'm going to say something, I don't mean to offend anyone, but I don't believe in DevOps teams. I believe in software development teams that practice DevOps. I believe in platform teams that practice DevOps, but I think the concept of a DevOps team doesn't make sense to me because DevOps is meant to bridge the gap for software engineering.
Yeah, and I guess by extension, a DevOps engineer is also a mythical creature.
That's right.
Stefan, what were you typing?
Yeah, I was going to hit send here. I was going to say, to me, SRE is kind of like a lifestyle. DevOps is the mindset and platform engineering is the experience. That's just kind of how I think of it, but they're all overlapping, as Skylar was saying, they're all intertwining and they all kind of come together cohesively, because DevOps isn't just for the SRE team or a DevOps person, it's a mindset. All developers need to follow that. If we're starting to move pipelines to developers to look at that, that's developer DevOps mindset. And platform engineering is the experience. You want to have good tooling. You want them to have a good experience using your tooling. I think that all encompasses platform engineering.
In my particular view of the world, like we have a platform team where SRE is actually part of it. It's embedded in platform. And the way that we've explained this is saying that we, as a platform, what we're trying to do is we want to enable the developer workflow. We want to accelerate it. And if we look at a developer workflow, it goes from coding to testing to building to deploying and running and operating. So you cannot do this whole thing without this reliability aspect of operating your service. And as a platform, we enable this operating through our SRE team. Doesn't mean they do things, instrument services for other people, but they make sure at least that the infrastructure is there, that they can have some sort of reliability or observability for their services.
And I think an important thing to talk here is metrics. And I don't mean necessarily metrics in terms of system metrics or application metrics or anything like that. I mean team metrics or team performance or however you want to look at that. How do you measure what good looks like in a team? And I think when you talk about what reliability is, that one's a fairly straightforward one. Is it available? Is it low latency? Like all those kind of golden SRE type signals. When you go to platform, it's how quickly can a new image get to production? And is it fully checked and scanned by SAST and DAST methods? And do we annotate the container image with the resulting information to give quick feedback to a developer about how good or bad their code may be? And then when you talk about DevOps, well, that's a tough one to define because it's really kind of wrapped up in the two of them, right? It's a mindset, as everybody else said. But I think, how do you look at the concepts of platform engineering? I think it's hard to do that without actually having measurable goals and measurable outcomes.
And Stefan, you mentioned, how really the focus needs to be on, providing this good experience to developers, which it's a very, just simple yet perfect way to look at it. and yeah, I think is extremely tricky, right? To make sure that you're listening to each other, right? There was this Disney guy that I was speaking to a while back, and he was and Keith, if you're in the audience, we were talking about this in yesterday's webinar as well, right? He was mentioning, like, how do you know that your platform is good? And he was saying measure the thank yous that you get from developers, which is like a very simple metric, right, to look at, yet I think quite profound. How have you approached this, Stefan, at Achievers?
That's interesting that he said that. Like, we don't do that necessarily, but hey, we have a platform. Our platform is all about giving recognition and giving thanks to your coworkers. So maybe that's an idea there to play off of in the future. But the way we do it today is, we have a couple things in place to help engineers feel like the SRE team is listening to them, and also we're approachable people. Sometimes SRE gets that not approachable vibe. They give that off. So one of the things that we did is we introduced office hours twice a week. So we open it up to everyone, and we're happy to help them with any questions they have or any deep troubleshooting they need. So we're sysadmins by heart. We've been in the weeds for years. We know how to dig deep down into problems and troubleshoot them really well. So we offer that as a bi-weekly thing, twice a week office hours, to get that kind of feedback loop. The other one is surveys. We have a survey tool in our platform itself. It's called Feedback, and we're able to ask questions and track the responses over time, which is really cool to see. And my PlatformCon talk is kind of about that. We had this journey about documentation, and documentation being out of date for years, because Achievers has been around for years, and we had documentation on Confluence from 10 years ago talking about Windows XP printers from an office where we didn't exist anymore. So, getting this feedback and then creating an action plan to actually address that feedback, and then go back to the engineers, see what they say, and then re-rate yourself on a regular basis. Another way that you can create a KPI, like Skylar was saying, it's important to have numbers that are measurable. So that's one thing that we measure. Another thing that we've played around with, we do it with some things, but we haven't figured out fully how to do it on a wide scale, which is measure rate of adoption. So anytime we make changes, we want to see how fast those teams adopt to our changes. So that's another great KPI that you could do to make sure that you're on the right track. You want that number to be pretty low. You want people to be adopting pretty quickly to your changes. And if they're not, there's probably something wrong with the process and you need to make adjustments.
I think it's interesting that you mentioned adoption. When Skylar and I, before we joined here, we were in a Google Meet, so we just got the wrong link. We were chatting about tools and organizations, and what's a tool spread or something. And if you tend to look at an organization, see what tools they use and how many duplicate tools there are, that's usually a red flag. And I think it's really important in platforms specifically that you look at the adoption of your tools and also the overlap of them. Because I think that's what also tends to happen. And now at least Stefan, I think you had the impression that we're mega organized and our platform started, but actually it was initially just like the collection of stuff that other people didn't want. And and that ended up like also just
Sounds
being
about
like,
right.
yeah, it's like being the orphanage for like these little utilities that other people create that they think will be useful for other people, and that's kind of adopted. And that ended up also that we had a lot of like overlapping tools, that either things that do kind of similar things, but not quite, or they could do exactly the same thing, but like one part of the org uses this version and the other part that. So I think it's a really critical thing to measure adoption, and also like what function it's serving, like what is it helping your user to do.
Yeah, what I that's a great point, Jessica. I completely agree with it. Is that adoption of tools is a really key concept, and so instrumentation of the platform tooling is important. How many daily users do I have? How often do they use it? You know, like those types of concepts. Just building in the same instrumentation you would do in software, especially in front end software, any kind of an interface. It's good to have that instrumentation in it. My team, my last job, did that. So we got metrics all the time that we'd be tracking on, you know, who's using this version and who's using that version of an API or a CLI tool or whatever it may be. I think also there's multiple types of metrics. So there's like the cultural metrics, which is Ron Westrom, his work that he did. Google has a very quick, like 10 question thing that you can use that measures the amount of trust in your organization. See if that improves over time as you're getting penetration of your platform. That's one thing, is the cultural metrics. The other one, in terms of usefulness, maybe, is some of the accelerate 4 key metrics. You know, deployment frequency, mean time to change, mean time to restore. Even though in the SRE community, MTTR is actually kind of losing a little bit of the hotness factor. And finally, change fail rate. So I think there's, you know, and then there's the hopefully obvious one of service level objectives, SLOs. And SLAs, which are the contractual versions of those. You know, so I think like you got to measure kind of them all. There's I was just at SRECon a few months ago, and I forget which talk it was, but it was a great talk where they discussed what are the ways that they approach SLOs internally and how do they create those. And it was a mixture of culture, it was a mixture of usage and uptake, and also, you know, SLOs, like pure SLOs, in terms of how is our service performing? Do we increase the reliability of a service by getting better penetration of the tooling?
Absolutely. And so we've talked about, you know, developer adoption, but another, you know, big thing, you know, a big question that comes up a lot in the community is how do you get also executive buy-in, right? Because you really need to tackle this from both ends. And I think this is very relevant because, you know, different teams, different people, different platform engineers will have, you know, different questions about, you know, what type of tooling, what tech stack, and so on, right? But ultimately, what's true for everybody is that you need to get that rollout successful internal, right? And so how, you know, having built platforms, how have you tackled this? You know, how have you done internal marketing to get people on board with the platform initiative? Jessica, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So I guess it depends, like there's 2 angles in this. There's the internal adoption kind of thing that I feel like it's almost the internal developer advocacy of platforms, which is a completely different ballgame than actually getting management to buy into platforms. So much that I actually think, if I think about where platform engineering is going, I think internal developer advocacy is an area that's kind of, well, that I hope will grow. I think there's an opportunity there for like a lot more internal developer advocacy. On the management side, like we actually recently went through this where we had to kind of re-explain what platform does after some management changes. And what I've found interesting is that, like, maybe I enjoyed the developer part a lot more, but like I said, it's completely different explaining it to management. And at the end of the day, as much as we want to focus on developer experience for our platforms, we're not doing this just for developers. We're working inside of a company that actually has to, I don't know, publish quarterly results and, in my case, sell boxes. So like, if you can't show how your platform is actually helping your company achieve their goals, you're going to have a bad time. And I don't know, that for me was like the big lesson here. So find a way to actually relate your platform into something that kind of ties into your company's goals as well, which might be easier said than done, but it's a but yeah, that's kind of the
and what were the business metrics that you focused on, if there's something that's more context that you can share in that?
I don't think I have specific business metrics for you. Like in our case, the platform is a lot with helping the organization scale. But I guess this framework of saying like we're supporting an engineering workflow and being very explicit about what this looks like help management to understand better what we're doing. Because I feel sometimes this whole concept of platform seems very abstract, like we're platform and there's DevOps and SRE and other stuff. And it just feels like a jumble of things. So actually having a solid framework that you can discuss, it kind of helps bring stakeholders along and helps them to understand what you're doing.
We use, you said a key word there, which is show. And we rely heavily on visuals to show this stuff off. And the best example is the obvious one, SLOs, right? That is a physical number that if you visually display it to somebody nicely in management, they can understand that and they can adapt to that. Because if the product team, for example, are pushing new products, but you start to see your error budget go down, you as the SRE team should be able to say, hey, work on your reliability. You can see it here visually. This is an actual number that impacts clients. And then I feel like that's helped us a lot with our relationship with product management and stake owners, whether it's management, like very, very senior management, or lower management, even engineering managers. Us as SRE can go to them and say, here is a physical number that you can see, make some changes. So that really helped us visualize that for the teams by showing them hard concrete numbers. We use New Relic as our monitoring observability platform, and they have a tool in there called SLM for service level management. And it's great because you can just show all the services for that product team and you can see how things are working. And that's what really has been a game changer for us.
I like what you said, like it also, having these measurements takes the abstract and makes it concrete. It's not just a discussion about things are going well or they're not. And this is like the tech team that's saying like, you should do stuff. Like we're actually showing people like, this is what it means. And this is the impact.
And the most important thing to us is our clients, whoever it might be, either internal or external. That should be the most important thing to us in everything that we do. So if your clients are having a bad experience because your availability is terrible, then that's going to reflect bad on the business. So these are real hard numbers that you can show management, and they should understand that. But we definitely had the conversation ahead of time with them and talked to them and made sure that everyone was on board with adopting SLOs.
I think the sophistication of your internal culture matters a lot too. And so if you're in an organization that has never heard of an OKR, doesn't create measurable goals, if that's the type of organization you're in, you just have to adjust your approach, right? You have to recognize that maybe they're going to go for those qualitative things that Jessica was talking about. Is it good? Is it bad? How are we doing? And that might be okay. But if you're in an organization that has top-down OKRs that fit 50% into the kind of, the drip down OKRs for other teams, and you can show roll up of your key results and how they're affecting other things. Well, that's a very different world, of course, because then you're really kind of possibly poorly driven by these goals and only these goals, but it's just such a balancing act based on what your culture is. I've worked in places where I had this great roadmap for my platform team, and we showed it to them and they're like, we don't understand this because it's not a Gantt chart. And that's okay, right? Like, I don't agree with that, but that's okay. That's what they understand. And so you just really have to know what your corporate culture is. I think revenue is a good proxy for prioritization, by example. So if you're a team that's 80% of the revenue of the company, well, guess what? You get 80% of the prioritization, because we are risking 80% of the revenue by you not performing well. And I think there's other ways that you can measure it. Again, It's really all based in the corporate culture. If you have access to SLOs, hallelujah. You're in a great place because you can really start to show the impact, especially if you're measuring them in a meaningful way.
Yeah, and you mentioned sophistication, Skylar, and I wanted to pivot on something a little bit different here, which is, different engineering teams within the organization will have different levels of sophistication, right? And so when building and rolling out this platform, how do you guys think about what is the right level of abstraction, right? In this case, into the platform for different teams, and how do you make sure that you can, make it versatile and customizable to the different teams? Skylar?
Good question. So I kind of approach it the same way we do statistics. And so one of the common things, like I'm a huge fan of Honeycomb and their work around observability. They're big fans of P90 and 5, the 95th percentile, 99th percentile, 90th percentile. And I kind of approach it the same way. When we go and talk to the teams, if you're trying to operate like a product team, you've got to get feedback. You've got to find out what their pain points are. You got to understand their business and how they impact the business. If it's a finance team, it's a very different thing than it is a vending machine team. And so like you just have to understand how each of these teams are, kind of find the universal pain points. And that's always the low hanging fruit, right? Is like, if I've got 10 teams and all 10 of them are having the same problem, well, guess what we're going to work on first? And I think that once you've gotten past that low hanging fruit, that's actually where it gets difficult. Now you got to have those proxies for prioritization. You got to have difficult conversations with your stakeholders, really understand your stakeholders, your relationships with them starts to come into play. And then you probably need something like a technical product manager, somebody who has a software engineering background and can play that sitting at the fence between your platform team and stakeholders to figure out the proxies for those prioritization. So I think the early goings of a platform team are the easiest. They're the most fun, just like about any software development process, probably. And then it gets down to the brass tacks and the harder work as you go along, and it becomes more difficult.
I find it very relatable what you're saying about like at the beginning it's easier. Like I've been with the platform team now for a bit more than 4 years. I don't know, we're at the point where we really have to focus, like I said, on the prioritization. I was thinking back like, man, it was so much easier in the beginning because there was a very clear fire. You just had to put the fire out and you'll be fine. But now all the fires are gone. Now you actually have to start making the really tough calls on what you want to spend your time on.
Stefan, what do you think?
Yeah, like
and by the way, sorry, I just want to say, if anyone wants to again drop any questions, anything in the chat or the Q&A that you guys want us to cover, feel free, because we are closing in on the hour. So if there's anything that you want us to talk about, drop it in. Stefan, sorry.
Yeah, like automation and simplicity is very important when we talk about these tools. So I think I mentioned it a few times already, but having sensible defaults for everything helps you move a lot quicker, and kind of standardizing things for all the teams makes it very easy. If you were to switch teams, you still have the same workflow. Something that I learned recently too, of talking to somebody from another company, they were talking about their alerts, and they allow every single team to create their own set of alerts. And we thought that was actually a bad way to go about it, because now everybody's alerting on errors a little bit different. They could be doing it the same, but they could be also doing it a little bit different. So we've adopted this sensible defaults for pretty much everything, including like the 4 golden signals. Everyone gets a standard set for their service. For the most part, services look kind of the same, but if you have something that looks different, you can create custom alerts, custom dashboards, anything that's specific to that individual service. So that's kind of how we go about it. And that helps hide a lot of the complexity that might be in the background. An engineer can still know the deep down insides of things and how we do things kind of behind the smoke screen of the platform tooling, because the code is all open source and any engineer can contribute to it, but to do their day-to-day job, they don't need to know that. They can kind of hide behind that screen and work in a standard language like YAML. That's what we use. Some teams use JSON, but I think that also helps engineers kind of not have to deal with the complexity of this tool and focus on their job, which is writing business logic and pushing it out into production.
Something that we've been talking about a lot recently, like I said, is this level of abstraction. And there's actually like the sliding scale. And on the one hand is you abstract nothing, and everyone has to do everything themselves. But then why does a platform even exist? And on the other end of the scale, you said with you abstract away everything and no one can do anything. And then you're in mega enterprise environment and no one wants to be there either. So like finding that like almost Goldilocks point in abstraction is so interesting. And I think as our platform has evolved, like initially what we thought was a sensible level of abstraction, like as our teams have grown, we've realized like that maybe it's too far on the permissive side of this. Like as we've grown more engineers in the organization, we're like, maybe we should be more opinionated. Like you never want to be on the enterprise level, but that kind of also changes as your engineering culture changes in the organization.
It's a thin line between flexibility and chaos.
Exactly.
I think that's such a good point about abstraction, though, because if you think about what's the purpose of an abstraction, it's to save complexity from, to save cognitive load from an engineer, right? To give them an interface that they can trust, such that they can just focus on the rigors of their actual work. And I think if you talk to an engineer, is it useful for us to give you the full control of your logging, monitoring, and observability? Well, maybe, maybe not. To Stefan's point, like it really all depends on, I think, what are your goals for, and I think complexity or sophistication of your engineers plays into that too. If you have engineers who are just hungry for the ability to change things, well, that changes the game a little bit. If you have engineers who are like, what's a kubectl? Well, giving them that control isn't really going to do anything. So that's such a good point.
And the thing is, you can have both of those engineers in one organization.
True. You got to meet them in the middle.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
And there's no product in the middle.
There's no middle product, but it's I don't know. It's like you said, how do you enable these people who are really interested in getting down into the weeds of the products? Give them the flexibility, but abstract away it for the people who don't really actually care about it.
I think Manuel is a speaker at PlatformCon, and he wrote the Team Topologies book, which I always go back to because in his book, there's only 4 types of teams. And if you don't buy into that idea, you probably don't buy into things like domain-driven design. And if you don't buy into domain-driven design, well, maybe you don't buy into microservices, So like how your teams are set up really matters there too. If you have a monolith and a monolithic engineering organization, it's not super valuable to them to have all these, normalized defaults because there's only one set of defaults. They're already kind of normalized. And so like, I think there's a good pointing in there too.
I think someone asked Keith, like, what if these engineers are both in the same team, like this super down in the weeds guy and the one doesn't want to do anything else? And I think maybe you just lean into it. Like, like, I don't know. I always see like it's good that we have cross-functional teams that no one has the same skill sets. So like if you have people who are more interested into the in-depth stuff, so lean into that.
If you open things up to people, you're always going to have that like hacker person who's going to want to dig in a little deeper and start investigating things. And at Achievers, we encourage that too. Like if you see a feature that's missing on the tooling and you want to add it and like it makes sense, then yeah, go to town. Like the code is there, make a PR.
Yeah, that's why I kind of like this concept of inner sourcing, that that people own things, but they're open for contribution.
Big fan of that too. You want to improve it?
It's there.
Yeah, you're always going to get those kind of key people. Like I think it's a good diversity to have some people that are, just coasting along developers. And then you have those little people that want to do that little bit of extra and want to unblock themselves. That's the key thing too. That's a mindset change that I feel hasn't really shaken from a lot of engineering companies is, your job is this, your job is this. We have silos. We do not break the silos. And I like trying to break down those walls and just be like, hey, if you need to go do something, just go do it. Like, we're all engineers, we can all figure it out. You can ask for help along the way, but try to unblock yourself if you can.
Teach them to
It's not
fish.
realistic.
Love
Yeah.
that.
I grew up in a world where we were on the other side of the fence from developers. I didn't like that world, honestly. I felt disconnected, and I didn't realize it until I had been embedded in a development team, and I just saw this free flow of information. And like when they had a problem and I could show them how to fix it themselves, they never came back to me for that same problem. I got new problems, But like that was just so much more fun and interesting to be in that. And I think there's still a lot of people out there, and if this is you, like I'm talking to you, who haven't seen that, haven't witnessed that, and haven't experienced a high trust team that's truly collaborative and really works towards shared goals well together, and doesn't really think of titles or roles and responsibilities as these like firm fixed concepts. They really just think of delivery. But I'll tell you this, when you find those teams, you will wonder how you ever live without it. And that's what DevOps really is meant to be.
The nirvana of development.
Nice. I think it's good to close on that note. In terms of the the sort of more technical conversation, I do want to spend 1 minute just going through the schedule of PlatformCon, because I know that it can be a little bit confusing. It's a bit of a different format, so just bear with me 2 seconds. And if you can see here, the core idea of PlatformCon here is that it's going to be fully virtual. There's only and all the talks are pre-recorded, right? So there's only 2 live components each day to the schedule, and those are the live kickoffs. So we're going to have a live kickoff at 10 a.m. for Europe, a little bit too early, I think, for North America, and that's going to be about 30 minutes, get together, stand up, welcome everybody, walk through the highlights for the day, and again through the format and the sponsors and all that good stuff, and then off you go. And after that, you can either consume the talks on demand at your own pace, so you can take your kids to school, work, do whatever you want, and watch the talks that you are most interested in, or follow a YouTube stream where we're going to have a few handpicked talks for you that are just going to run on the YouTube stream. Then 2 hours after that, there's going to be a live Q&A for another 2 hours on Slack. So if you're not on the Platform Engineering Slack channel, go there and join. And that's where all the speakers for the day are going to be available to answer any questions that you have. We're going to have breakout sessions and so on. So that's a really good opportunity for you to actually interact with other attendees and with the speakers themselves. And there's going to be 4 dedicated Slack channels within the Slack space for the respective tracks. Then after that, again, you're free to watch talks, and then we repeat the same dance for a friendlier North American time zone. So just wanted to quickly go over this. If you have any questions, ask in the chat, or you can find me on the Platform Engineering Slack channel as well. With that said, I think we have a couple minutes left. There is one question by Cornell, so maybe we can get to that really quickly if anyone wants to answer that. Skylar, do you see that?
I do, yeah. The question is, as a DevOps or an SRE, by the way, the E in SRE is engineer, should we have to automate everything? And the answer to that I would give you is quite simply no. Everything is not valuable to automate. You should automate the things that create the most value for teams and create that better developer experience. I think the answer is probably more nuanced than that, of course, but and it's probably closer to it depends. But broadly, if I have to give a yes and a no, I'd say no.
Nice, I love it. Rapid fire. Okay, and then on the theme of rapid fire, since we only have 2 minutes left, top highlights for PlatformCon. What do you guys have? Jessica, do you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, it's quick. I had a list here. So there's a talk that I really interested in seeing, and it's in the platform culture one, and it's about autonomy or chaos and how to scale platforms in high growth companies by Jelmer Borst. And what I really liked when I read that abstract is mentioning that platform engineering should focus on boring tech. And there's this concept that I think has been floating around on the internet for a while, is like the boring tech is like focus on things that have been proven. That's not surprising. And I think Camille Fournier wrote a post that platform engineering should also be boring, because as a organization, you only have so many innovation tokens to spend. And as a platform team, you tend to use up a lot of them and cause a lot of like cognitive load in your organization. And so, yeah, I'm really interested to see that one by Jelmer and see like how he brings boring tech into the platform space.
Awesome. Stefan, what you got?
Well, I'm definitely interested in hearing Jessica's talk because, as I mentioned earlier, I'm into HelloFresh. I think what they're doing is cool, so I'm excited to hear more about that. The other one that I'm really interested in is how not to burn $7 billion on your platform by Steve from Visible Value Stream Consulting. I feel like that's probably a good one because, you know, sometimes we forget that we're in the cloud and we send a lot of metrics and we send a lot of data and we, you know, use a lot of resources. So I like epic fails. I hope it's a good story. So that's what I'm interested in.
We all love an epic fail. Skylar, what you got?
Well, I'm a big fan of platform as a product, so Manuel's talk on that is a very obvious one for me. Certainly, Stefan's looks fascinating. I'm really interested in the platform design track. I'm speaking in that, so that's biased, but that's the stuff that I've struggled with myself as a leader getting right, and so that's just about every talk in there. I think I'm very interested in. I really like the talks that focus on the people or the process aspects, you know, like that's the stuff that's just so hard to get right.
Amazing. We're right on the hour. Stefan, Skylar, Jessica, thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate your time. Thank you everyone for joining us and for your patience at the beginning. Mainly my fault as usual. And so I look forward to seeing you all at PlatformCon and watching all of your talks as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good